Good evening, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to the program on behalf of the India International Center. To make it comfortable for you, we brought down the temperature today. But that happened because Professor Suryanarayan decided to come today. And of course, I don't know whether he did it or Madam did it. But hearty welcome to both of you, to the Professor and to Madam. Now, apart from bringing down the temperature, there was also a storm in the morning along with them, not that they brought it. But the political storm in Sri Lanka continues. And, Professor Suryanarayan doesn't need an introduction to the IIC audience. He has been coming to us often, though first time now after COVID. But this is being recorded. So it will be seen by, many others, outside the IIC over a period of time. So I think it's only appropriate that I say a few words about the distinguished speaker. Studied in Ernakulam, same college, Maharaja's College. He was there a couple of years before I went there. Then Bombay, then Delhi, political science, international relations, South and Southeast Asia. But for Professor Suryanarayan, international relations meant not only studying the pecking order among the states, but also what happens to the human beings. If I may say so, if I have your permission, the state is there only as an instrument to take care of human beings. It is not a super being which requires sacrifice of the human being from time to time. So that humane approach, I have always found it so admirable, and that is why he has taken a lot of interest on what is called the Tamil question. It's not that he has maintained that the Tamil question is the only question that matters between India and Sri Lanka. But Tamil question does matter. What is happening to such a large, section of the human beings who are in Sri Lanka? Well, he has been to Peradeniya University, Sri Lanka. He was a member of an international monitoring team when there was an election. There are many universities he has been associated with. I will not mention all of them. Mahatma Gandhi University. And he was the founding director of Center for South and Southeast Asian Studies, University of Madras. And abroad, he has been teaching at LA, Los Angeles, Georgia. I take it is not Georgia in Europe, but it's Georgia in the United States. He was with the UGC team that was evaluating universities. He was also National Security Advisory Board, on the advisory board. I have come across 7 books, there may be more, written by him, but I won't take time to name all of them. 60 edited volumes he has contributed. I better stop here. Now, just a word about, our program. The title is The Crisis in Sri Lanka and Implications for India. Implications for India. So it is not, we are worried only about the implications for India. we want to understand what the crisis is. And we also look at the implications for India. That can also include implications for others too. Because in international relations, there is a cross connection. Now, how did the crisis originate? The media have been saying the worst economic crisis since Sri Lanka's independence in 1948. Maybe. But very slowly the media started telling us why the crisis is there at all. Because as an outsider, I believe, and many of the friends I have spoken to, they also agree, that the economic crisis was begotten by misgovernance. If the Sri Lankan people vote into office a set of brothers, and if there is no proper governance, well, there were economic problems, but they could have been handled. They could have gone to the IMF much earlier. So it is not the economic crisis. It is, the economic crisis arose because of a deeper crisis. Now, India has contributed a good deal, $4.5 billion. This is the amount given by the Sri Lankan foreign minister. Yes, but questions arise. Could India have done more? Apart from contributing, could India have done more? Can India do anything more even now? Could India have taken the initiative for convening an international conference for looking at the problem and, contributing financially and otherwise? So these are some of the questions which I wanted to share with you, but Professor Suryanarayan, you are free to tell us about all other issues, you see. And ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, let us request Professor Suryanarayan to address us. Would you like to sit there or would you like to come here? Thank you.
Ambassador,
he'll just help you to put it. Yes, this is up.
Ambassador Fabian and friends, may I at the outset express my deep sense of appreciation to Ambassador Fabian and India International Center for inviting me to come here this evening and share some of my thoughts with you. I'm extremely happy that my good friend Ambassador Fabian is chairing this session for one reason, that if I exceed the time limit, he will not look at the watch. Writing about Oliver Goldsmith, Lord Macaulay once said, there is nothing that he touched which he did not adorn. The same thing can be said about Ambassador Fabian. Perhaps the zenith of his career was when the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait took place, and he, along with I.K. Gujral, evacuated all the Indians from that troubled spot. I think that if you look at the diplomatic history of India since independence, that will rank as one of the highest achievements that we had. For those of us who belong to the teaching profession, speaking is not a difficult task, but to be brief and beautiful is an arduous one. I am reminded of an anecdote pertaining to a judge in the Madras High Court. The judge used to get his lunch in typical Madras fashion in a tiffin carrier. The other judges also used to get their lunch, and they used to share the lunch and had a good time. One day, along with the tiffin carrier, there was a slip of paper in which his wife had scribbled KISS. So his colleagues started kidding him. Your wife sends you not only delicious lunch, she also sends you sweet kisses, and we envy you. The judge told his colleagues, do you know what this piece of paper means? This evening I had to address a college gathering, and KISS means keep it short, stupid. So I'll follow that adage. I shall try to be as brief as possible. The Hollywood actress Elizabeth Taylor told her husband soon after her 9th marriage, this too shall be brief. To begin with, I want to explode few myths that have been propagated in Sri Lanka and believed by large sections of the people, both Tamils as well as Sinhalese. The first myth, which was propagated by Ivor Jennings, the well-known constitutional pundit, who was also the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ceylon, was that Ceylon was a model colony. It was a model colony because transition to independence was very smooth. It was a boast of D.S. Senanayake, the first Prime Minister, that he was able to finalize the terms of independence over a bottle of whiskey one evening with the colonial secretary. There was no prolonged war of independence in India or in Indonesia or in Vietnam. The second reason why it is called the model colony is that the first Prime Minister, D.S. Senanayake, had not only the support of the majority Sinhalese community, he had also the support of the minority groups, the Tamils as well as the Muslims. And Ivor Jennings pointed out perhaps Ceylon is an ideal country to teach others how to build up a nation. Within 3 decades, it became one of the notorious killing fields of the world. We do not know what will happen in Sri Lanka in the days to come. And I'll speak about that at the end of this. The second myth is that in Sri Lanka, the past weighs down heavily on the present, and truth and objectivity become the first casualties in times of conflict. The well-known anthropologist Professor Stanley Tambayya, after years of painstaking research, has come to the conclusion that the Sinhalese and the Tamils share many common features, many religious beliefs, many customs and all. Traditional caste, kinship, religious beliefs, customs and so on. It was Rabindranath Tagore who once said, the greatest source of all calamity in history is misunderstanding. For where we do not understand, we can never be just. The same thing applies to Sri Lanka. Sorry, this is the problem when I prepare notes. If I know notes, I can go on speaking. But since I prepared, the Sri Lanka over the centuries is an interaction between the Sinhalese, the Tamils and Muslims have evolved a composite culture. Their religion, their population structure. In fact, the well-known Marxist writer Calvin De Silva once said All of us have come from India. Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims. The only question is, when did we come and from which part did we come? Religion, all religions have gone from India. Dress, food habits. In fact, the common food among the Sinhalese and the Tamils are the idiyappam, puttu, and which is the food in the southern part of Tamil Nadu and in Kerala. Names, Sinhalese girls, Kamala, Vimala, Shanta, Parvati, all names are from India. Language, all the languages are derived from Sanskrit, Pali, Tamil words. Political institution. As a result of centuries of interaction, they had developed a composite culture. The differences arose only between the Tamils and the Sinhalese arose only from 1956, when the Sinhalese political leaders wanted to build a nation on the basis of the religion of the majority people and the language of the majority people. Looking at the past through the prism of the present can lead to distortions in history. The well-known historian, one of my good friends, late Professor Indrapala, was Professor of History in Jaffna University, has written a beautiful book where he says, as a result of archaeological excavation and all, there was a time when India and Ceylon were united by land. So people, animals and all used to move from one country to the other country. Then it got separated and you had the remains of those in the Adams Bridge. The Park Straits, which divides southern India from Sri Lanka, had never been a barrier. It had always been a bridge through which people, ideas, all those things moved freely. Today, what the Sri Lankan Navy is trying to do is to create a Berlin Wall in the Park Straits. They do not want the refugees to come. Like the Berlin Wall in Germany, that will also, they try to create that, it will also collapse. There is another myth, which late Professor Urmila Fadnis of Jawaharlal Nehru University, who initiated me into the study of Sri Lanka, because my area of specialization had been Southeast Asia. She said, you are in Madras, now you must start working on Sri Lanka and Maldives. She used to say, the typical Sinhalese belief is that North India gave them salvation and South India gave them invasion. Nothing is further than the truth. Because when it's true that Buddha was born in Lumbini, he preached his first sermon in Benares and attained Nirvana in Gaya. He never came to the south of India. All his teachings and travels were to the north of India. But the Sinhalese believe that Buddha visited the island 3 times. You can't, when people believe, you can't challenge that. So I don't challenge, but that is what they believe. But you and I know that is not what we were taught in the school. And Buddha made the country Sinhala-Dvipa, the island of the Sinhalese, and Dharma-Dvipa. Dharma-Dvipa is the land of the Buddhist Dharma. In fact, when Theravada form of Buddhism spread in a wide way in Sri Lanka during the Polaniruva and Anuradha periods, Buddhism had already died in northern India. But South India was the cradle of Buddhism. It was from contact with Buddhist centers of learning in South India, Nagarjunakonda, Kanjipuram, Madurai and all, the Theravada form of Buddhism spread to Sri Lanka. In fact, it's a matter of pride for us, the Tamils. The greatest epic of the Theravada form of Buddhism is not in Sinhalese language, but in Tamil, Manimekalai. That is the greatest epic. Kerala Buddhism was a very strong religion. But with the advent of Shankaracharya, Hinduism reasserted itself in Kerala and the Buddhists migrated to Ceylon. They easily got assimilated with the Sannyalis communities. Ambassador Fabian, there are surnames like Kurupu among the Sannyalis. Kurupu is a common surname in Kerala also. Buddhism was also a very strong religion in northern part of Sri Lanka. In fact, Nagadvipa, that is a famous site in Jaffna, where the Buddhist pilgrims go. But when the conflict started, the Tamils disowned Buddhist religion. Go to Kadaragama, in the southeastern part of the island, where the main deity is Muruga, God Subramanya. And who are the main devotees? The main devotees are the Sinhalese. They carry the Kavadi with great devotion, intense devotion. Only time when I went to Kadragama was in 1999. Then I was a member of the international monitoring team for the presidential election, and I was in charge of Hambantota. So one day before I went to a temple. And I found a strange thing. There was a curtain before the sanctum sanctorum in front of the god. I was thinking like temples in Madras, they put the curtain before they do the Divaradhana in the sanctum sanctorum. They want to decorate the god. So I was waiting, they will open it and they will do the Divaradhana and all. 1 hour I waited, no. Then I asked somebody. Then they said, they don't know, only the priest can go in. Only once in a year, this curtain is open and people could see the god. And most of the pilgrims on that day were Sinhalese, not Tamils. So, any Buddhist chaitya you go, there is a Ganesha. They worship the Ganesha, and it's such a composite culture that they had. Now, there were invasions from the south. What used to happen was that there were 3 kingdoms in Ceylon before the British arrived. One was the Jaffna kingdom, then there was a kingdom in Kotte, and then there was the southern kingdom. Southern kingdom was expanding. There were wars between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. But these wars were for territorial expansion. There were Sinhalese soldiers in the Tamil king's armies and Tamil soldiers in the Sinhalese king's armies. And both the Sinhalese kings and the Tamil kings used to take the help of the rulers in South India. So this rivalry between kingdoms for territorial expansion after 1956 is interpreted as a rivalry conflict between Tamils and the Sinhalese, which goes on for several centuries. In fact, Tantric Practices, I hope you know what is Tantric Practices. The center of Tantric Practices is in Kerala, in Malabar, near Calicut. There is a place known as Ramanathikara, near the Calicut University. There was a deputy high commissioner in Chennai. His name was Valsan. He was a Malayali fellow. He used to arrange for Premadasa. Premadasa believed in Tantric practices. When there was a no-confidence motion against Premadasa, so Valsan told him, I'll help you. He went to Ramanathikara and the Tantric gave him some vibhuti, sacred ash. He said, put the sacred ash in the parliament in the chairs, the no-confidence motion will be defeated. And the no-confidence motion was defeated. So Sinhalese leaders they come to Ramanathikara, they go to Puttaparthi to see Sai Baba, they go to Tirupati and all. And more than everything, like us, they also believe in astrology, black magic and all. So that is what unites all the South Asians. The next myth. In India, when we study Buddhism and study it as a religion which preached non-violence, which preached ahimsa, karuna, compassion, no caste system. Now in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan society, like the Hindu society in India, is full of caste system. The majority caste is known as the Goigama, Goigama. And most of the political leaders of Sri Lanka belong to the Goigama caste. D.S.M. Naika, John Kotlawala, W.R.D. Bandar Naika, Mrs. Bandar Naika, J.R. Jayawardene and all. Ranil Wickramasinghe. There was only one lower caste man who became the Prime Minister and then the President. That was Premadasa. Premadasa belonged to the Hinna caste. Hinna caste means Dobi, washerman caste. Once J.R. Jayawardene told Amadalingam, and Amadalingam in turn told me, this Premadasa, he is not only a Hinna, he is Hinna's Hinna, Dobi's Dobi. Similarly, among the Tamils, the majority communities are the Vellalas. The Vellala is something like our Kayasthas in India. Prabhakaran belonged to the Karava caste, agriculturist fisherman caste. His emergence, in fact, is a challenge to Vellala supremacy. But today again back to the caste system and all those things. So what we study is Buddha's teaching, they go against Buddha. Because I don't say that when I go and speak in the universities in Sri Lanka and all, because it's a matter of faith for them and better not to rub them on the wrong side. Though after the July Holocaust in 1983, J.R. Jayawardene wrote a history book. It is titled Golden Threads, and it was circulated widely and freely by all the embassies and High Commission. They gave me also not one copy but 2 copies. Now, this book of history book, Golden Threads, is divided into 3 parts. The first part starts from 544 BC to 1815 AD. 544 BC is the day when Prince Vijaya went to Sri Lanka. 1815 was the day when the Canadian king surrendered power to the British. Now here, before Prince Vijaya arrived, there was a very dynamic history of Ceylon, of the Tamils, of the Sinhalese, of the Muslims and all. Their trade, their commerce, their political institutions, their animist religious belief. All these things are ignored in the book. And history starts with the arrival of Prince Vijaya. The second period starts from 1815 to 1977. 1815, as I told you, when the Canadian king surrendered to the British and the whole island came under British. 1977 was when in the election the UNP won a thumping majority. J.R. Jayawardene became the first for the Prime Minister, next year became the President. In no other country will you find a history book written by the great leader like J.R., where even the Independence Day is not important. February 4, 1948 is not a landmark in his history. And then 1977 to the present, where he says the Tamils started the terrorism in Sri Lanka and we had to put it down and various others. This is the history book written by President himself. So full of misconceptions and all. And as I told you, as Rabindranath Tagore said, the greatest source of all calamity in history is misunderstanding. For where we do not understand, we can never be just. I organized a seminar in Madras University years ago when Professor Jayadeva Vayangura, the well-known political scientist, came and spoke. And he told my students that in Sinhalese language, the word for nation building is Jadiya Gudamagana. That means making of the Sinhalese nation. Making of the Sinhalese nation, the Sinhalese word for nation building. That is, in other words, the minorities have absolutely no role to play, and the minorities have to be subservient to the majority communities. As is well known, in 1983, when the communal Holocaust took place, Jayadeva did not even express an iota of sympathy for the innocent victims. The next point is that Sinhalese are a majority community who have a minority complex. They constitute about 74% of the population. But they do not look at the Tamils as a minority, but as a part and parcel of the Tamils in Tamil Nadu. 75 million Tamils in Tamil Nadu. And some of the statements of the Tamil leaders exacerbated this fear. Amadalingam used to come to Tamil. The first time that he comes to Delhi was after July 1983. Otherwise, always to Tamil Nadu. And he used to say, in Sri Lanka, North fights against the South. In India, South fights against the North. When they formed the federal, Suryanarayan formed the federal party in 1956, English federal, but in Tamil what they should have done, they should have translated federal into Tamil. But they called it as Tamil Arasi Katchi. That means Tamil government party. So Sinhalese believed, and perhaps with certain amount of justification, federalism is the first step towards separation. In fact, the Sri Lankans do not realize there are countries which are smaller than Sri Lanka which practice federalism in a bigger way and become vibrant democracies. Take the case of Switzerland, 6 million people, plural population, but the interests of all people are safeguarded. And what is more, power is devolved. And the next point that I want to mention is constitution making. Now, Sri Lanka, since independence, had 3 constitutions. Then a constitution was debated for the last so many years. In the classroom situation, I always speak of a research scholar who went to the Vijitayaba bookshop, one well-known bookshop which has branches all over. The student asked him, I want the latest edition of the Sri Lankan constitution. The shopkeeper told him, we don't sell periodicals here. The first constitution, 1947 Salisbury Constitution, it enshrined parliamentary democracy in a unitary setup. Provision was made in the constitution that minority rights will not be infringed, but they never cared. As we all know, the first legislative enactment of the Sri Lankan parliament was to render the Indian Tamil voteless and stateless. Then in 1972, they had the first Republican Constitution, where Mrs. Bandaranaike confused her overwhelming majority under the first past the post system as a national consensus. The parliament was converted into a constituent assembly, and it was in this constitution the name was changed from Ceylon to Sri Lanka. An exalted position was given to the Buddhism, and there was no minority rights. The tragedy of Sri Lanka was that even the left parties had joined hands with Mrs. Bandaranaike at that time. The 1978 constitution, where again Parliament was converted into a Constituent Assembly by Jayawardene. He introduced the executive presidency system. And President was all powerful. It was Jayawardene's boast that Sri Lankan President can do anything except making a man a woman and a woman into a man. Parliament was devalued. Prime Minister was a rubber stamp. In fact, one of the state guests after Jayawardene came to power was Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. And Lee Kuan Yew advised him there should be complete political stability for the next 10 years. Of course, elections were postponed, referendum was held and all, but that period saw two Jvp uprisings. First in 1971, April 1971, then after India Sri Lanka for 87 to 89. 87 to 89, Sinhalese call it a Bhishana Samaya, the days of terror. When those two rivers of exquisite beauty in southern part of Sri Lanka, Kalaniya Ganga, Mahayagili Ganga, were clogged with dead bodies and foamed with blood. I used to tell my Tamil friends, if Premadasa can kill, murder, butcher the Sinhalese youth like this, do you think they will have any sympathy for the Tamils? That is what happened at the Fourth Ilam War. Only positive aspect of the 1978 Constitution was proportional system of representation, which enabled two non-territorial minority groups, the Malay Tamil, the hill country Tamils and the Muslims, to send more representatives to the parliament. Otherwise, under the first past the post system, there was only one member from the North Tondaman got elected in 1977 and all. So this proportional system of representation enabled the Muslims as well as the Malay Tamil. And I think when the new constitution will be debated, the process has not yet started, we should insist that the proportional system, there must be arrangement by which the non-territorial minorities are also represented there. There have been several amendments to the Constitution, 20 amendments. I will not go into all of them. But the 13th Amendment, we all know, for the first time the provincial councils were created, powers were devolved and all. But it was not implemented in actual practice. You give power by one hand and take it away by the other hand, because Premadasa was not interested in the 13th Amendment. To give you an illustration, education is a devolved subject, higher education is a centre subject. Transport is a devolved subject, but there is a bus between Batticaloa and Colombo that comes under the centre. So you sabotage the devolution. In fact, when the Chandrika Kumartunga introduced her constitution, G.L. Peris was a law minister. I used to meet him quite often. He used to say, there was no devolution in Sri Lanka. We want to introduce devolution. In fact, the 2000 draft constitution, which was a national consensual document, UNP Choksi had contributed a lot for that. That was really a federal constitution, though the term federal was not used. That was really, in fact, there was no Article 356. The governor has to be appointed in consultation with the chief minister. And you can't easily dismiss the provincial government. But it was, and citizenship was provided for the Indian Tamils in the 2000. But Ranil Wickramasinghe, at that time the leader of opposition, he tore the constitution away, and Chandrika couldn't implement that thing. The 19th Amendment, 13th I mentioned, 19th Amendment was one where the amendment was introduced by Ranil Wickramasinghe when he was the Prime Minister, where the powers of the President were curtailed and the powers of the President had to be shared with the Cabinet. Then 20th Amendment, which Mahinda introduced soon after he became the President, it restored the powers of the President. Now, Ranil wants to do away with 20th Amendment, reintroduce 19th Amendment. But the problem is, he is a one-man political party. And that too in the national list. So whether he will be able to muster the two-third majority, or if the basic structure of the constitution is to be changed, it has to be kept before the people in a referendum. Whether that could also be done is a big question mark. How will I characterize India-Sri Lanka relations? For want of a better word, I'll say love-hate relation. As I mentioned to you, all aspects of Sri Lankan life have been influenced by India. In 1927, Gandhiji went to Ceylon to popularize khadi and prohibition, and he went round the country. Mahadev Desai had done a small book with Gandhi in Ceylon, which also included the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi. And Gandhiji he was so struck by the similarities between the two countries. He called Ceylon as India's daughter state. At the end of his visit, addressing the Reddyar Sangam in Colombo, Gandhiji advised the Indian minorities there to identify themselves with the aspirations of the Sinhalese people. What he called sugar in milk. You must conduct yourself in such a way that you are like sugar in milk. The concept of sugar in milk, all of you know, it relates to Gandhiji coming from Gujarat, where the Parsis went first. The Parsis went into the 9th century to the kingdom of Navsari. They took their sacred fire, went to the king and told him, "You have been giving asylum to many people, give us also asylum. We have been persecuted in our native land." So king told him, "There are already Muslims here, they may not like your presence." So the Parsi religious leader asked the king to get the glass of milk. The glass of milk was brought. Then he asked the king to get some sugar. The sugar was put in the milk, stirred it. It did not overflow, it became sweet. And the Parsi religious leader told the king that our presence in your midst will be like sugar in milk. And as we all know, this community, minuscule in number, mainly concentrated in the city of Bombay, had done so much for the progress of our country, and they're proud being called Indian. Now this statement, what was the Chinese attitude towards the overseas Chinese at the time? After the Republican Constitution in 1911, Dr. Sun Yat-sen said, wherever there are Chinese, all of them are Chinese citizens. Citizenship went by kinship, not by the territory in which you live. Whereas Gandhiji and Nehru had the foresight to say, wherever you go, you must identify yourself. But what Gandhiji did not realize perhaps at that time, sugar can get dissolved in milk, but not salt. Two types of nation building. You must all have heard of Muhammad Wali Khan, the Pakistani political leader. You must have heard his father's name, Khan Abdul Khafar Khan, the frontier Gandhi. So, Muhammad Wali Khan was asked by a journalist once, are we a Pakistani? Are we a Muslim? Are we a Pathan? Are we a Pakistani? Are we a Muslim? Are we a Pathan? So, Wali Khan said, I'm a Pakistani for the last 35 years. I'm a Muslim for 1200 years and a Pathan for the last 5,000 years. All of us have multiple identities. In 1971, a famous political scientist called Louis Hall, he surveyed the 132 countries in the world and found only 13 of them, 9% of them have no problem of nation building because they speak the same language, follow the same religion, speak the same language. In our region, the only country which has no problem of nation building is which country? Maldives. Because according to Maldivian constitution, only a Sunni Muslim can be a citizen. It's a reactionary constitution, but it does not have problem of nation building. All others who stay there can become permanent residents. All the others have problem of nation building. Now, I want to compare and contrast Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka. Two contrasting ways. In Tamil Nadu, along with the Indian National Congress, there was a Dravidian movement started by E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. Periyar considered August 15, 1947 not to be the day of deliverance but the day of slavery. He said in Tamil, Vellakkaran Bonan, Kollakkaran Bandan. That is, the white man is gone, the robber barons are coming. And everywhere they put black flags. And one of the leaders who put the black flags was Karunanidhi. Then Annadurai came into the political fore. He realized, despite the limitations of the Indian constitution, we can come to power through the ballot box and we can do our level best to promote and foster and encourage Tamil culture. So before 1962, when he was in Rajya Sabha, member of Rajya Sabha, he gave up the demand, before the Chinese aggression, he gave the demand for a separate state. Then since 1967 onwards, either DMK or the AIDMK which is in power. And those who used to burn the national flag and used to burn the constitution at every conceivable opportunity have no qualms of conscience in upholding the national flag and hoisting the national flag in every occasion. In Sri Lanka, it's the other way around. In 1948, I said it's a model colony. Everybody supported. Parting in the way started in 1956 when they started the Sinhala only act. The Federal Party came into existence. Then in 1966, Selvanayagam, the Tamil leader, came to Madras. At that time, the Federal Party was toying with the idea of a sovereign state consisting of Tamil Nadu and Tamil areas of Sri Lanka. And Annadurai told him, I will not support you. He foo-fooed that idea. This has been written by A.J. Wilson. A.J. Wilson is the son-in-law of Selvanayagam about his visit to Tamil Nadu. So then Selvanayagam realizes we'll have to fight our own struggle from. Then moderate leaders took initially lead. The moderates came to power, were voted overwhelmingly in the 1977 election on the slogan of Tamil Eelam, but once Amadalingam became the leader of the opposition with cabinet rank, he was more interested in the perks and all, and the Tamil militants got disgruntled with them and started the path of militancy. Finally, the militants came to the foreground. So, if I may put it broadly, in Sri Lanka, the transition was from consensual, cooperative, consensual, consociational, competitive, conflictual, conflagrational. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, separate state giving way to integral part of India and all. The second aspect of it is love-hate relationship. They love India because they got everything from India. India, according to them, gave them salvation. North India. So every one of them is, at the same time, they also hate India. I can give you several illustrations, but I'll give you 3 or 4. The first one was 1971, Jvp Revolt, when though Mr. Bandaranaike asked for external help from various countries, it was India which rushed there and enabled Mr. Bandaranaike to remain in power. 6 months later, the East Pakistani crisis developed. We banned the overflights from West Pakistan to East Pakistan. So they had to go to Colombo and then go to Dhaka. And Colombo provided refueling facilities for the Pakistani. That is the sort of gratitude they have for India. 1987, the IPK was inducted on the invitation of President Jayawardene, which enabled the Sri Lankan army to withdraw from the north and the east and concentrate itself in the south. With great sacrifice of men and materials, we were able to bottle up the LTT guerrillas in the jungles of Omonia, which enabled them to withdraw. And they killed, butchered, massacred the Sinhalese youth. Nearly 100,000 Sinhalese youth were killed during those 2 years, what I told you as Bhishana Samaya. The third one of Mrs. Bandaranaike's greatest achievement was getting the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace passed with India's support in the United Nations. But when implosion in Pokhran took place in May 1974, they changed their attitude. We are advocating Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, not only to remove the external powers, but also regional powers becoming dominant. Shirley Amarasinghe said that we will not allow it. And then they started supporting the Pakistani concept of South Asia as a nuclear-free zone, etc. Now I come to the economic crisis. I do not look at it as merely an economic crisis. I look at it as an all-round crisis that Sri Lanka has faced over the years. Since 1965, they have been negotiating with the World Bank that, except one or two economists in Sri Lanka who are pointing out the country is drifting towards economic anarchy, rest of the world, they have problems, we have problems, they will overcome it. That is the sort of attitude that they have. So with spiraling inflation, corruption and various other things, it is a matter of big question mark before Sri Lanka. How long will it survive like this? Now India has provided aid. Rajan, India has provided aid after 1 month. When the tsunami struck, within 24 hours we reached there. When the Jvp Revolt took place, we reached there in our planes, took 6 hours. Our ships took 36 hours. Should it have taken 1 month for us to have aid? I was asking Ambassador Fabian, and I'm asking learned people here, Venkat is here, why did it have so much 1 month delay in things? Could we not have air-dashed medicines, food materials earlier? Only silver lining is that Stalin has behaved like a statesman now, unlike his father Karunanidhi. When the IPK soldiers came to Chennai, he did not have the courtesy to do. I wrote them, I spoke at that time. The Indian National Army, they might have committed mistakes, but we should welcome them. He said, no, it is innocent people killing force. I will not. Unlike that, Stalin today, some wiser counsels have prevailed, and he is sending data. But should it have taken 1 month for us to rush? If some of you can enlighten me, who are very close to the corridors of power in Delhi, was it Tamil Nadu which delayed? I don't think so. Was it Delhi we delayed? I don't know. So I think our help is magnificent, and I have no doubt about all these things. But I was told a Tamil friend of mine who today has become a Canadian citizen sent me an email. Well, we have all flashed the photographs of food aid going there. Sinhalese papers have not done that. So, anyway, gratitude is not a important feature in international relations, but at least there should be some sort of acknowledgement of India's aid should be there. So we'll have to watch and see how the things will develop. My own feeling about Sri Lanka is that the unity among the opposition will not sustain for long. I'm one of those, and I have written my latest article in the New Indian Express. Ranil and Gotabaya belong to the same stock. And Ranil may like to work with Gotabaya. So if the opposition unity is divided, then shall we say another Tiananmen Square will take place in Sri Lanka? From the point of view of Tamil Nadu, two things are important. One, the refugees should come. Now the Sri Lankan Navy is trying, now there is a 45-day fishing ban. So trawlers do not go to the parkway. Only Vallam, traditional crafts are going. And these Vallams are also motorized. So they also enter the Sri Lankan waters. So they are unable to come in a big way. And not merely that, the Sri Lankan Navy is detaining them, taking the court, imposing a fine, and then letting them go. Professor Valentine Daniel, the well-known anthropologist who was teaching in University of Michigan in Ann Arbor when I met him first, later moved over to Columbia. He says a person becomes a refugee when he loses trust in the society, in his surroundings, in his government, in the society. He already becomes a refugee. It's only a question of time before he leaves the shores of the country and goes to another. Many Tamils, many Sinhalese also have lost trust in the government. According to my friends in Colombo, Candy and all who ring me up occasionally, they say there are 4,000 Tamils who are today staying near Mannar. Talai Mannar is the place from where they take the boat. And they're negotiating with the fiberglass boat owners and all. Law, supply and demand work as far as schleppers, human traffickers are concerned. More demand, more money. So I have been pleading that Tamil Nadu should welcome all those who want to come to India. I told some of the NGOs, you should go to Dhanushkodi. As soon as the refugees come, give them milk, give their children medicines and all. Tell them that you are welcome, you are our people and it's our duty. Second thing, not merely Sinhalese want to come, not only Tamils want to come, Sinhalese also want to come because of the political repression. You may recall Mangala Munasinghe, who was the High Commissioner here during the first Jvp Revolt. He had come to India, he had come through normal channels. He was living very near my place in Indiranagar, he and his wife, Tamil wife. So all those Sinhalese also who want to come, we should come in. And we should support the democratic struggle. Because the voice of the people is the voice of God. The Rajapaksa brothers should be thrown into the dustbin of history. India International Center, for the first time after 1 month, is having a lecture. In Madras, we had one meeting in the Press Council of India 10 days ago. NGOs, Students' Union, Teachers' Union, Trade Unions, we must all come together and extend our support to those people who want to change the government in Sri Lanka. This is my plea. I am coming to the last. This third one, last point that I mentioned. Now we had introduced the Citizenship Amendment Act, under which those who have come from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh are entitled for citizenship. They have spelled out the communities and all. I had written at that time that instead of spelling out the communities, we should introduce the word persecuted minorities. So that even Shias, the Ahmadiyas and all will get included there. It's anyway, it's an election promise of the BJP, they are doing it. But why exempt? Why exempt Tamil refugees? One reason that was given is that Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh are theocracies, whereas Sri Lanka is not. Venkat knows the word theocracy is not mentioned. Buddhism occupies a pride place in Sri Lanka, and according to Professor K.M.D. Silva, in actual practice, the theocratic state. According to Tamil poet Kashi Anandan, about 2,000 Hindu temples have been desecrated since the dawn of independence in Sri. And like Prabhakaran used to repeatedly say, a Brahmin priest in the northern province was burnt alive. And that is what converted him to take to the path of violence. In what way is Sri Lanka do? Have not the people in Tamils in Sri Lanka suffered? How a Tamil house is burned by Sinhalese thugs, does it become accidental fire? If a Tamil girl is raped by Sinhalese goons, does it become consensual sex according to central government? So I have been pleading that all those who want to take citizenship of India should be given. All those who want to go back, let them go. We'll encourage them to go back. But those who are gone also are coming back today. What endears Tamil Nadu to the Tamils in Sri Lanka? There is no fear of insecurity in it. There was a Bindruva massacre in hill country some years ago. I was at that time teaching in Peradeniya University. So I went and in Hatton I met a Tamil girl called Indira, whose brother had become an Indian citizen under Sirima Shastri Bank and was running an automobile shop in Perambur. She told me, I was so happy in Perambur, I could go for a second show, night show film. Here I can't even come to Hatton town during the daytime. There is no fear of insecurity. What is more, their living is better in Tamil Nadu than they. And most of them want Indian citizenship. And they are qualified under naturalization. Government of India treats them as illegal migrants. Though they use the term official document, parliament speeches and all the word refugees. I request all of you in your own way to raise your voice, mobilize support and pressurize New Delhi first to remove the term illegal migrants and then give them citizenship to all those who want to come here. Especially the 29,500 hill country of Indian origin Tamil. I come to the end. It was Mark Twain who once said that the worst form of death is to be talked to death. I should not commit that crime. I should end here. If there are simple questions, I will answer. If there are difficult and complex questions, I leave it to Chair. Thank you. I'm prepared to be lynched.
Well, dear Professor, we have listened to you with undivided attention because you took us back in history and you brought us back to today. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. I have been told by Indrani from the program division who was there till recently that it's all being recorded. So I would request you to mention your name first so that, when it's recorded, we know who would have asked the question. And considering the time factor, we might bunch up answers, to questions. So over to you. You could sit there if you like. That will be more convenient. Please.
I'm Wing Commander Dua. Hello. Yeah, I'm Wing Commander Dua. Thank you for educating us on what is going on in Sri Lanka. But would you consider the role of China and US in the current turmoil there? You didn't even mention that.
Maybe any other question, because it's a question of time factor. Any other next question? Yes. Because it's almost going to be 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Professor, recently there was a
Name,
Dr. Sarvjit Dudeja. China played a very tricky game of fertilizer. Because of that fertilizer, there was a not proper agriculture produce, and this economic crisis led to such a crisis. So it was a planned way of China, or it has just happened?
Both questions relate to what I wanted to say, India versus China in Sri Lanka. The relations between China and Ceylon started in the late 1940s, when Ceylon was a Western satellite. They wanted to export rubber to China, and China in turn exported rice. It was J.R. Jayawardene who went to China and negotiated the deal. China gave maximum price for the rubber and minimum price for the rice which was given. Ceylon was kept out of the United Nations for a long time. In fact, it became a member of the United Nations only in 1955. East European countries were also non-members. Then finally a package deal took place by the East European countries were admitted, and Ceylon was also admitted. In those days, China was not a member of the United Nations. But on major issues affecting international relations, John Kotlawala in Bandung and all took an anti-China stand. But Mrs. Bandaranaike coming to power in 1972 onwards, the Colombo powers, in fact, which was mediated between India and China after the Sino-Indian conflict. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka took a stand which was favorable to that China and not to India. China, once it started liberalization, according to me, became a status quo power. It's like a power like the United States. It was no longer a revolutionary country standing shoulder to shoulder with Vietnam, the Second Indochina War. Lin Piao once said our relations with Vietnam is like the lip and the teeth. Today, China backs reactionary regimes, whether in Myanmar, for Myanmar it used to be support of the military regime, or in Pakistan, or in Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankans used to be clever. They used to come to India first with a shopping list, Lakshman Kadaragama, GL pages and all. They know very well India cannot supply because the Tamil Nadu factor, and we cannot provide weapons to kill the Tamils. Then they will go to the Chinese. In the case of Ambadnota also same. They first came to India, India said no, then they went to China. But during the Fourth Elam War, China helped Mahinda Rajapaksa very, very much. They used to have warehouses in Ceylon where arms used to be kept, and every day the Sri Lankan army will ask for arms and they will supply. Whereas we couldn't do that thing. And ignored the gross human rights violations which took place in Sri Lanka during the Fourth Elam War. You know, when the LTT was running away from the scene, and they used to bomb orphanages, hospitals, they asked the International Red Cross, the UNHCR and all to leave there. China completely stood shoulder to shoulder with Mahinda Rajapaksa. And they're very grateful to them on that score. And economic linkages started. China has got far more resources to give to others than what we have. And this comparison between India and China, in the ordinary Sinhalese mind, went against India and not against China. That's why I mentioned the fact that according to my friends in Colombo, not much publicity was given when the Indian food grains reached Colombo Harbour. So we have to watch and see. But China has also, there are people who have realized the Chinese embrace can be Afzal Khan's embrace. One, they want to own up the capital in Sri Lanka. Then they also did not want Sri Lanka to go to the IMF in a big way. So India versus China and Sri Lanka is something which we have to. Today we are in an advantageous position because the intelligentsia among the Sinhalese also realizing that India is a better friend than what could be Sri Lanka. I must tell you another incident. During the Fourth Elam War, according to UN estimates, 40,000 Tamils have been killed, UN estimates. I was at that time a member of the National Security Advisory Board, and Gandhi Bajpayee was the convener. So I told Gandhi Bajpayee, I want to speak on Sri Lanka. You asked the MEA Joint Secretary to come and speak also. Tirumurthy came and spoke, who was at that time, who is now a representative in the UN. And I also spoke. I said that it is in our interest that the innocent Tamils are not killed. So you force a ceasefire on Sri Lanka and allow those who are caught between the Sinhalese lions and the Tamil tigers to leave. You keep them in a safe place in Sri Lanka or you bring them to India. We owe it to the Tamils. You know, we never subscribe to absolute sovereignty. South Africa is one classic case. In the name of sovereignty, you can't practice racial discrimination. In May 1983, Sri Lanka enacted a legislation by which dead bodies could be disposed of without inquest. Sankar Bajpayee was at that time additional secretary. He called Bernard Telegrapne, who was the High Commissioner, and told him, you are doing things which even the South African government are not doing, and stop it. We express our protest. Bernard Telegrapne had the temerity to ask Sankar Bajpayee, Is it MEA speaking or Tamil Nadu speaking through MEA? Shankar Bajpayee raised his voice, it is India speaking. So we never have condoned, in the name of sovereignty, violation of human rights, mass murder and all. So I told in the meeting on the National Security Advisory Board that we should enforce. The US was willing to do that at the time, supported. But we did not do that. And our hands are also tainted with blood. And all the perfumes of Arabia, as Lady Macbeth mentions in Sleepwalk, cannot sweeten our dirty hands. That is why I asked you, why is it took us 1 month? Venkat, you answer, enlighten me. Why did it take 1 month to send supplies? Could we not rush supplies earlier? Rajan? You raise your voice, don't speak loudly. Not only this, in this country,
please.
powers that be in Delhi should listen.
No, it should have gone much before.
Or you are
absolutely.
doing this because we are Tamils?
Not at all. Not at all. I think all of us are concerned about human rights. All of us are feeling strongly about all this. And you have absolutely raised a legitimate question, which haunts all of us also. I think 1 month was a little too late. That's also a fair statement to make of the situation, which is so grave. There's no doubt. Absolutely valid point.
Mike.
Why is the media not getting into details about what happens in Sri Lanka? It's just so marginal. They talk about China, they talk about their economic crisis in terms of debt. They don't go into any
I have
detail.
a cynical answer. It's because we are Tamils. If it were UP bias, sorry.
I think basically the reason was India did not want to be seen to be supporting the Rajapaksa clan, and they perhaps wanted to expose the Chinese. They were not forthcoming, to do the things which the Gotabaya and Mahinda had asked when Wang Yi went to Beijing, Colombo, to delay the payments which were due to them, and so that could be two reasons: to expose China and also to ensure that India does not appear to be backing the Rajapaksa clan.
You're right. In fact, the Minister of External Affairs spokesman made a statement some days ago. I have mentioned that in my last article in the New Indian Express, where he said that we are not interested in upholding the Rajapaksa regime. We want to help the Sri Lankan people. In other words, people's interest today is far more important than the Rajapaksa interest. And that marks a change in India's neighborhood policy, especially towards Sri Lanka. And Suhasini and our spokesman from Colombo also said that we have no vested interest in upholding the regime. That marks a definite change. Otherwise, formally in 1971, 1987 and all, though the government was unpopular, we were buttressing the Mrs. B and JR governments. So that represents a change. But why should that delay help to the people? Within 1 hour, you can reach Colombo from Chennai. Can we not airlift it? How many flights are there? Can we not airlift medicines, milk powder?
1 second, excuse me. This is not working. I would once again request everyone to mention their name before asking the question because it's being recorded. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you very much, Professor, for your very, very deep insights into the Sri Lanka's history. I'm coming from there, from the other side of the Park Strait. So thank you very much for
You
your...
didn't tell your name.
My name is Niluka Kadurugamua. I am the Deputy High Commissioner of Sri Lanka here in Delhi. It was very useful to listen to the history from the perspective
If you
of...
could speak little loudly.
Yes, it was very nice to have listened to you from the perspective from the south. Now there was a lot of discussion here that there was a delay of sending aid to Sri Lanka from India. Well, if you look at that, the first line of credit of $1 billion was extended in November when the Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa came here. Now you were telling that India was, Mr. Narayan was telling that India was not willing to perhaps to be seen as giving aid to the Rajapaksa, so-called Rajapaksa clan. But when Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa came here in November and secured that line of credit, that was the beginning of the economic crisis. And then there was another $500 million worth of a credit line for petroleum purchases. So India has been right throughout helping, and for which we are grateful. You said that there is not much gratitude in the newspapers. Well, I mean, the Prime Minister himself tweeted yesterday when the shipment from Tamil Nadu went there. So maybe Tamil Nadu took 1 month to send aid to Sri Lanka, but we are grateful to that. We thank that. But the central government has been extending assistance from the beginning. So I don't think that there was a delay in that part. Well, having said that, I have one question, Professor. There's a big crisis happening in Sri Lanka, in the backyard of India. So
A big
a crisis is happening. There's a big crisis in the backyard of India. There's a social fallout in Sri Lanka. So what are the real implications on India, and what India could do, what more India could do to help us? Thank you.
Please.
See, I'll put it this way. It is in India's interest to have governments in neighboring countries which are friendly to India. Or if you want to put negatively, which are not against India. How do we accomplish that? In ancient Indian political thought, there are 4 paths: Sama, Dana, Beda, and Danda. All 4 are justified depending upon the circumstances. To give you an illustration, in 1983, July Holocaust, Mrs. Indira Gandhi telephoned J.R. Jayawardene, tomorrow Narasimha Rao is coming to Colombo to study the situation. She did not ask J.R.'s permission. Then series of events took place. In 1987, Operation Vatabirachi, Tiger guerrillas were running away. Then we sent the food items through ship which were sent back. Next day, planes. Rajiv Gandhi was determined not to permit a military solution. During the 4th Iran War, we didn't do that. Because after Rajiv Gandhi's assassination, we underwent a catharsis from which we in Tamil Nadu are yet to recover. I'm fond of saying that Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka are like Siamese twins. What afflicts one will affect the other. So and as far as I am concerned, I don't belong to the government. It's so many years since I went to South Block. From Chennai, I'll shout, because we want a democratic government. We do not want a corrupt government. We do not want a dynastic rule. We do not want a government which violates human rights without any qualms of conscience. Government to government relations is different. Let them do whatever. But why not we, teachers, students, trade unions, political parties, come to the aid of the struggling masses in Sri Lanka? When I heard you speak, forgive me for saying so, I thought you were more royal than the king and more Anglican than the bishop, supporting government.
One second, time is advancing, so this will probably be the last question. Okay.
Good evening, sir. My name is Parth. Thank you so much for the insights on the topic. My question is
I can't hear your
A
whispering.
little closer. Keep the mic.
Good evening, sir. My name is Parth. Thank you so much for the insights on the topic. My question is, what would be the possibility to get back the rebels, especially in this kind of situations? The rebels.
Rebels?
Yeah.
Which rebels are you talking about?
The Sri Lankan militants. Against LTTs and all that. Because they are trying to get back, and there is a possibility for them to pick up weapons at this point of time.
Whether the LTT will revive itself is the question.
Yeah.
See, unless the grievances are resolved, unless Sri Lanka introduces participatory democracy, the discontent will remain. What form the discontent will take depends upon the Sri Lankan situation. It's interesting to note that after the war ended, from the IDP camps, those who are pro-LTT, they bribed their way through, and according to knowledgeable people, about 10,000 people came to India at that time. All planes from Colombo to Chennai was full. Whether they remain in Tamil Nadu or whether they have left for other countries is something which is to be seen. Diaspora, there is still group. The Tamilnet group is still being supported by the LTT. Diaspora, there are powerful sections who are followers. Away from the battle scene, they can be revolutionaries. So they want to support the LTT. Whether LTT will revive. There are political parties in Tamil Nadu who swear by the LTT even today. And you can't separate Tamil Nadu from Sri Lanka. So it depends upon finally the powers that be in Colombo, how far and how soon will they introduce a political system where multiple identities can coexist. Today I can be a Tamil in India at the same time be a proud Indian. Why not to introduce such a system in Sri Lanka where a Tamil can be a Tamil at the same time be a Sri Lankan? I'm always fond of quoting Gandhiji. If you go to minority rights group in London, they put the greatness of a nation consists in how well it treats its minorities. And this may be a very bad statement in Sri Lanka. There the greatness of a nation depends upon how well you treat the majority.
Did you have a question? That will be the last question, please.
Sir, just to clarification, is
Your
it
name once again.
Yeah, Sarvjit Dudeja. Is it true that like Nepal, Sri Lanka wanted to be a part of India during freedom at 47 and Akhand Bharat is the aspiration of BJP? Do you think one day it will be part of India?
Never. The Indian national leaders never subscribed to that idea. Only thing was, as I told you, Selvanayagam toying with the idea of a sovereign state consisting of Tamil Nadu and north and eastern part of Sri Lanka. In fact, many of the Sri Lankan Tamils were more pro-British, were more pro-Sinhalese than Sinhalese themselves. The man who was advising D.S. Senanayaka in rendering the Indian Tamil stateless was the Tamil Sarkandaya Vaidyanathan. In fact, Vaidi Gundevi, illustrious predecessor, in his book Outside the Archives mentions Sarkandaya Vaidyanathan is more sinnerless than sinnerless themselves. When Mrs. Bandaranayaga wanted to introduce temple entry in the northern province, so allowing the Dalits to enter the temple, some of the Tamil leaders did satyagraha against that. One of them was Sundaralingam, who is considered to be the father of Tamilism. They called the plantation Tamils a Totakatan, Katimirandi, which means barbarian in the plantation. There are a lot of contradictions. The Sri Lankan Tamils used to say rightly that is a minority, they were discriminated against. But how are they treating the Muslims? When Prabhakaran was in control of Jaffna Peninsula, he asked all the Muslims, 70,000 of them, to leave within 72 hours. Most of them are not returned. They are all in Puttalam. There are so many contradictions that I didn't have the time. I touched the bigger scene and left it there.
One more. One last.
With the mic, please.
We will close it. We must have some question for the next seminar also.
What has happened to the mic?
I think everybody can listen. It is a general question. You know, the whole world is suffering from the terms like minorities, majorities, this and that. Don't you think the very word minority or majority, they are terminological inexactitudes, they are misnomers, and they have done more harm to the respective nations and countries than a good to the handful of the people or to the minority of the people.
It's too big a question for me. I leave it to Fabian.
Next time. We shall arrange for another seminar on that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even good things have to come to an end. We have had a very, what shall I say, intense discussion after the lecture to which, as I said earlier, we listened to with undivided attention. And the interactive discussion was very intense because you all asked very pertinent but not always easy questions. But the professor was, prepared to answer all your questions patiently and to the point. And since we are the India International Center, I was glad to see the Deputy High Commissioner from Sri Lanka because, here we discuss things from an Indian point of view and also from an international point of view. It should not be Indo-centric. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand to Professor Suryanarayan and to Madam, and a big hand to ourselves. Thank you.